Hi, everybody. Welcome to CELPIP Live. We're already a couple of minutes late. I'm having some trouble with my system, so let's get right into it. Let's get into our trivia question for the day. The month of March takes its name from which Roman god? The month of March takes its name from which Roman god? Let me know the answer in the comments below. I would prefer if you did not chat GPT or Google it and gave us your honest guess. But anyway, let's go and get the show on the road. Hi, if you're new here, CELPIP Live was made for test takers like you to help you understand a little bit more about the test. So if you're new here, I would recommend that you subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as we go live. Today, we're continuing with our reading section, since that is the section that is a little bit tricky for a lot of us. Today, we'll be talking a little bit more about how to just build up on your reading skills like normally throughout the day, like in everyday life, and how that will supplement your skill development for the test as well. So let's go welcome our guest for today. Hi, Brandi. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm very well, thanks. And I do see we have some newcomers to our CELPIP Live show today. So very special welcome if today's your first episode. We're always happy to have you with us. And how are you doing today, Ashwati? You're looking nice in your red, very spring-like.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I also have flower earrings just to, to manifest spring soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the blossoms are already starting. As if some of you suffer from seasonal allergies like I do, you notice it in the eyes and a bit stuffy up with the blooms opening, but they're so gorgeous. So we welcome that at this time of year for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So
we
we've
already
got
have a lot of people joining us, and I think some of them were also like waiting for us. So I think we can get right into it. It's nice to see.
Yeah, very nice to see people waiting patiently as we get set up. So right, as Ashwati said, we're going to do one more episode on reading because we've had so many requests for help with this part. So the plan today is to practice some skills that we would need to become better readers overall in daily life. And then we're going to apply those same skills practice to answer a couple of questions from a past CELPIP test. And we're going to target reading part 3 today because again, we've had some special requests from viewers like yourselves for help with that part. So the skill that I really wanted to hone today is understanding the structure of the written piece. So regardless of how long the passage is that we're reading, for the CELPIP test, most reading passages would be 4, maybe 5 paragraphs. The very first thing we must be able to do to be an efficient reader is to recognize that there will be one main topic that the entire piece talks about. All right, so again, whether it's 4 paragraphs, 10 pages, or 1,000 pages, there's going to be one broad topic that guides the entire ideas and development throughout that passage. So we need to determine that very quickly. Once we've understood that general topic, we then have to understand that every single paragraph within the written text is going to discuss one specific main idea that relates back to that topic. All right, so we have to have those main ideas first. And once we've recognized which ideas are being discussed throughout the passage, that's when we can finally start recognizing specific details. And these are usually those 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why of the situation. And within one paragraph, we are only allowed to talk about one main idea. So all of those specific details will relate back to that particular idea. So this is the basic structure of the written text, and we're going to apply those skills right now. We're going to practice finding main ideas and specific details in just a typical reading passage that I largely wrote myself today. This is an email. And again, if you're familiar with the CELPIP test, you'll know that your reading part 1 actually gives you an email to read through. So I thought, even though this is not a real CELPIP test question, this is one that I've generated with a little bit of help from ChatGPT today. By the way, ChatGPT was a terrible author today. It spit out some really awful writing pieces today. So I took some loose ideas from the platform and I rewrote them to make them a lot more suitable for today's practice. So that's what you're seeing here. Can you do a quick read through? I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. Can you read through this email here, and as quickly as you can, let us know in the live chat what you believe to be the broad topic of this entire piece. What's the whole thing about? Keep your answers short, like a couple of words, maybe 3 words at the most would be enough. So let us know in the live chat, and Ashwati can share out any of your answers that come in.
Hello.
Hello. That was fast. Do we have any ideas?
No, I actually only have one suggestion. Oh, now we have a couple. So travel plans, and then Canadian conference and hotel recommendations. A travel to conference. Looks like, yeah, travel plans. Conference, travel plans. Yep.
Okay, sounds good. So I would agree with all of you speaking about travel plans and conference. That seems to jump out at the page right at us. And remember, when you're looking at an email, I'll just back this up for one quick second. When you start your CELPIP reading test, by the way, I would advise you to look at the bottom of the email and just find the writer's name. So Tomiko is the author of this email, and Tomiko is writing to Sanji, the greeter, or in the greeting rather, is the reader's name. So when you hear me reference Tomiko or Sanji as we're talking about this email, these are the 2 people that I'm referring to. So now we know. And again, when you look at any piece of writing, whether it's an email like we see here, or another passage like a news article that you're reading online, if I was to ask you which paragraph was going to give you the most helpful information to introduce the topic, I sincerely hope you would tell me that that would be the introductory paragraph. And if we look at this first paragraph closer up, I can easily see how most of you today selected travel plans as the main idea. Travel plans is one of the very first details mentioned in the opening line of this entire passage. So when you're working through a test, like a CELPIP passage, you're being asked questions about what the idea of the whole passage is about. You're going to want to focus your attention to start with clearly on your first paragraph. I know that sounds like common sense, but your introduction is designed to, again, identify that general topic. And it's also going to give you a little bit of background context usually. So there are a few specific details within this introduction that follow those 5 W's. If we look very closely at this very first paragraph, we see we've got a what, a where, and a when. So we know that, yes, we're traveling. That's sort of that guiding idea that keeps this whole email together. But we're traveling specifically to this BCTL conference. It's occurring in Vancouver from May 2nd to May 4th. So this, again, introduction, background context, it's laying the foundation for the rest of the passage that's to come. So we already understand as readers that everything discussed within this email is going to relate back to this conference and the travel arrangements that Tomiko is trying to make with Sanji. Now, I wanted to point out another structural element that's going to help us all find details a lot more quickly as we read through a passage. So that second sentence here in this introduction, it actually identifies for you 2 of the main ideas that you can assume you're going to be reading more about. Can you have a closer look, please, at this final sentence within paragraph 1? And in the live chat, can you identify the 2 words that as a reader now you're expecting to find more information about as you get into the middle sections? 2 words only will do it. So let's see if you can find them.
Flight, flight and accommodation. Flight and accommodation, flight booking, flight and accommodation, accommodation.
Right. Okay. So let's box these. So these are the specific ideas that, again, have been identified right in the opening, and that's not by accident. So the writer is letting us know that even though we're discussing travel plans to get to this particular conference, throughout the body, which is the middle part of this email, we can expect to then find more information about the flights, first of all, and secondly, accommodation. I want you to note the order of these 2 words in this final sentence as well. Since flight has been identified first, we can assume if this is organized well, that the next paragraph in this passage is indeed going to discuss flights. And because one paragraph can only talk about one main idea, that next paragraph will only be about flights. And the moment we then start talking about accommodations, which is like hotel bookings, that's going to have to come in a separate paragraph. So if we're reading this correctly, we'll have flights first and then hotel accommodation in the third paragraph. So let's double check the structure. Here is the second paragraph. And as soon as we start reading it, immediately as the main idea, you do notice that this is identifying the topic for us as flights. Okay, and again, at a very quick glance, we should be able to pull these details out. Once we've recognized that this paragraph is only talking about flights, it's the only idea it can talk about, we can expect to find then specific details all about the flight bookings. So again, before I even look at the rest of the sentences in this paragraph, when you just think about logically your real life experience, if we're trying to book flights, we can expect from those 5 W's to very likely be finding information that relates back to the when. So dates and times would be important, and probably the where as well. We'd need to get to certain airports in order to fly in. All right, so have a quick skim read through. Look for those details. You don't have to type anything in the chat. I'll give you about 10 seconds just to read this through. Double check that we've got some of these details that you're expecting to find. And everything checks out. Every single detail within this paragraph is talking indeed about those flight bookings. So again, the dates and the times. So leaving Toronto, that's the location, May 1st in the morning, coming back May 4th in the evening. The second part of this paragraph offers up another option. So if we wanted to stay in Vancouver a little bit longer, we could come back on May the 6th instead. Okay, so again, the takeaway here is recognizing we are only allowed to talk about flights in this paragraph because that is the topic of this whole paragraph. We're still relating back to the travel plans in a loose way, but this middle paragraph is giving us specific details. On a CELPIP test, if you had a question asking you something to do with flight bookings, you would know then to come to this particular paragraph to pull out the details that you need in order to answer the questions very quickly. So this is why it's just so important to recognize the structure. Okay, so as soon as we're done with flights, we're ready to move on to our next topic. And think back to that introduction. Remember how flights was mentioned first? So it's no surprise this was the next paragraph. In the introduction, accommodation was the second point that was introduced to us. So we would expect then that the following paragraph is very likely going to give us information about those hotel bookings. And sure enough, when you look at the very first line here as a main idea, hotels or accommodation, same thing, has been identified for us. Okay, so again, if we're talking about hotels here, the efficient reader is already predicting the type of information that it expects to find here. So in the real world application, if somebody's writing to me to try to book a hotel, I'm expecting them to provide details perhaps about specific hotels they found. Definitely, we're going to want to know where this hotel is, perhaps cost items. So these are some of those 5 W's or specific details to find. Can you take just about 10 seconds or so, skim read? And as soon as you're able, can you type at least one specific detail that you've located? You can type that right into the live chat, please. And it has to give some sort of guidance about hotel bookings. I'd say there are 3 specific details of note here, but I'd be happy today if you could at least identify one of them. So we'll see what you come up with there today. So specific details is what you're looking for. Hopefully you can find at least a few.
Okay. Review proximity. Oh, there's proximity. The distance of the hotel.
Okay.
Review and cost. Sutton Hotel. 10 minutes walk from the venue. Review located nearby. And yeah, it's near the conference.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So I kind of focused in on those 3 details too. So we have a suggestion as to the what. So Sutton Hotel has been recommended. We sort of know a when and a where together. It's only 10 minutes walk to the venue, and their reviews are favorable. I counted that as a specific detail because I think it's important for Sanji to know that past tourists have found it very, very pleasant to stay at, right? Cost isn't clearly defined here, but all we get in that next line is that the cost is reasonable. So it is mentioned as well. So again, everything that we discuss within this paragraph, we are only allowed to discuss hotels. We cannot talk about restaurants or sightseeing or any more flight information. None of those details would match up with the topic of this paragraph, which is about hotels. So again, if you had a test question that asked you something to do with hotel bookings, you would want to find your way to this particular paragraph so you can start to pull the relevant details out and answer those test questions very quickly. The next paragraph I'm going to show you is the final paragraph or the conclusion of this entire email. And before I show it to you, can you let me know in the live chat, please, what types of details you would expect to read about in a concluding paragraph in an email? What is the function or purpose of the last paragraph in any email or in most pieces of writing? But we'll talk about the email particularly since that's what we're looking at right now. What do you think? Think about all the emails you've written in your lifetime. Think about all the emails you likely receive. Most of us do this on a regular basis, particularly if you're working. So just think back. What's the purpose? What's the point? Why do we have a last paragraph? What's it doing? What would you expect to be reading about here?
Summary of the email, summary of the previous ideas, final thoughts. Somebody, I think, just wrote what they expect the last line to be, which is, let me know your thoughts.
Okay, I see. You're giving me the actual statement. Okay, no.
Conclusion, summary, feedback. Somebody says outro.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, in an email, chances are the writer is going to refer back to that general topic. And since we were talking about travel plans to get to a conference, it's really no surprise that Tomiko is starting off this first paragraph by saying, I'm excited for the conference. So that's just a gentle sort of nod back or acknowledgement to the broad topic that we set up in the introduction when we first learned that we were traveling to this conference in Vancouver. And you're right about looking ahead to sort of a next step or a future action. Quite often in an email, if the writer wants the reader to do something more, this is exactly the location to place it. And if you look through the ideas here that Tomiko's written, there is an implied next step. Tomiko mentions about wanting to make the bookings. So this is her way of inviting Sanji to respond with Sanji's own ideas. And then specifically with these bookings, we're going to mention again the two precise ideas we've been discussing. The middle paragraphs discussed flight and accommodation details. So these, of course, are the bookings specifically that Tomiko wants to make very quickly as soon as Sanji is in agreement with that. And there's one final step at the very end and the very last line. Tomiko mentions they'll settle the costs later. So whether somebody pays for the trip now and then they expense it through their work account, we don't yet know the details, but this can be considered, again, a next step. So just to look at the structure of the whole piece, and this is the important piece, we're going to be applying these skills to a reading part 3 just next. So let's summarize what we've just done. Of the 4-paragraph structure for this email, we know that the main topic of the entire piece is generally introduced right up here in the opening paragraph. So this is how we knew right away we're traveling to get to a conference. We needed to know that right away. As soon as we've got that covered, we then look to the middle paragraphs. Now, there are only 2 middle paragraphs here. Sometimes there could be more. But in this particular example, the first middle paragraph only talks about flights. So because flights has been identified as the topic here, all of the details contained within can only talk about flights and nothing more. And the moment we have a different main idea to discuss, and in this case, it's the hotels, once again, the only details that we are allowed to include in this paragraph as writers would be details referring back to the hotel bookings. And finally, this last paragraph that we just analyzed generally summarizes the main point. So we're going to this conference, and then there is a next step about making bookings. So we need to confirm our flights and our accommodations. We'll settle costs later. This particular email is structured so clearly, the coherence is strong. So you've heard me probably use that word coherence in other episodes that we've discussed together online. And when you're being marked on some of your own writing skills for CELPIP, your coherence is one of the skills you're being assessed upon too. And when we say coherence, what we mean is what we've just talked about. You are introducing the ideas and organizing them in a very structured way to make the reader's job so easy to follow your train of thought and to know exactly where to look within each particular paragraph to locate details of need. So let's take these strategies of identifying main ideas and specific details, and we're going to apply them to a more intermediate level text from an actual CELPIP test. And again, I chose part 3 because it does cause a lot of you a little bit of grief. We've had some requests for help with it. So if you're fairly new to CELPIP in general, please allow me to just quickly explain what we're doing in CELPIP Reading Part 3, and then we'll talk more about this particular passage. So for reading part 3, you're going to be given 4 paragraphs exactly, just like you see here. And the whole article itself is designed to teach you about a person, a place, a thing. We call part 3 reading for information. And every single paragraph, just like it is here, is going to be labeled with a particular letter. As you can see, I've circled the letters to point them out to us. You're going to have 9, I hate to say questions, because on this part of the test, they're really not questions at all. They're sentences, they're statements. I'm going to refer to them as statements. You'll have 9 statements on the right-hand side of your computer screen, and your job is to match up the ideas discussed within each statement to one of these 4 paragraphs. So you can see now how identifying the main idea of each paragraph quickly is so important, because it's going to then allow you to look at the statements and figure out which of these paragraphs is probably going to discuss those ideas. This is a matching activity. It's almost like a puzzle or a language game. So if you look at statement 1, and let's pretend, for example, you match it, you find the ideas discussed totally in paragraph D. You would then choose D as the answer to number 1. And then you would go on to statement 2. And this time, perhaps the ideas there are discussed in paragraph A, and so on. So you're going to select the answer, or the letter rather, to the corresponding paragraph as the answer to your statements as you match them. From time to time, you might actually get a statement on the test that isn't discussed at all in the passage, or maybe only part of that statement is discussed, but another part is missing altogether. And when that happens, you must select E as your answer. And you see that at the bottom here, it says not given in any of the above paragraphs. So we're going to go through this passage as a group now. We're going to try to figure out what the main ideas and specific details are. We're going to make a little outline of those main ideas, and then we are going to answer 2 questions together as a group. And I chose this passage particularly for 2 reasons. First of all, it is actually a real passage on a free CELPIP test that we offer on our website. So if you go to celpip.ca, you're going to find 2 free practice tests. And this particular passage comes from practice test B, to be precise. So as we discuss strategies for this passage today, and as we answer only 2 of those questions, I challenge you later on to go back to this free practice test that you'll find online, complete the rest of the activity by yourself. There is an answer key provided for the free practice test, so you can check right away to see if you've matched the rest of those statements accurately. And that's a really good check-in for you to see how well you're doing with these important reading skills that we've done. I also cover this particular passage in one of my free Zoom webinars that I deliver about once a month. So some of you might already be familiar with it too, which is good. We're going to be answering different questions though about this passage today. So I hope that you can join our live chat and help us out as we discuss the answers. So first things first, we have to determine quickly what the main idea or the main topic of this entire passage is all about. And what I'm going to do to present this today is I'm going to show you just the first sentence of paragraph A. We've already discussed introductions, like in that email, and we've already determined that, generally speaking, in that first paragraph, it's going to introduce the broad topic of the whole piece. Now, I'm just showing you the first sentence for now, but can you read through this first sentence by yourself, please? And as soon as you can identify what you think to be the focus of this entire passage, would you please write it down into our live chat today? There is one word here that really jumps out at us and makes us assume that this is probably what we're going to be learning about today. So your job right now is to find it. One word will do it, I think.
Dragonflies.
Yeah, dragonflies. Okay, so what happens in reading part 3? The vocabulary does become a lot higher level, right? As you can see. So here's a tip. I don't want you to panic when you start to see all these intermediate and advanced level words. I want you to, for now, skip over words that perhaps you're not familiar with. So for example, in that top line, I see words like carnivorous and odontates. And these are words that are very challenging, perhaps unfamiliar to you. So for now, as you're getting acquainted with the passage, what I want you to do is focus on words that you do understand. And if I look at that top line, even though there are some very challenging vocab words, I see the word insects. And I think that's a word that most of us would know. So as soon as I see insects, and then in the second line, I see the word dragonflies, what I'm hoping you're doing as you read is making the connection that a dragonfly is an example of an insect. So clearly, with that connection in mind, it pushes us towards understanding dragonflies could very well be the topic of this whole passage. And as we keep reading the rest of this one sentence, the very last detail says, scientists have only recently begun researching them. And them refers as well to dragonflies. So again, research is occurring with these insects. So because all of the ideas within that first sentence of the whole passage is pointing right back at the word dragonflies, that's what this whole sentence is about. That's why we are under the impression right away that dragonflies is probably the topic of this whole piece. And if we're right, as we keep reading, every single paragraph is indeed going to discuss dragonflies. So during the test, by the way, in the testing room, when you take CELPIP, you will be given paper and pen. So I encourage you to take notes for this part. You can write the word dragonfly right at the very top of your piece of paper, if this was your actual test question. And that way you don't forget what you're reading about. So I'm going to show you the rest of paragraph A, and you're going to skim read it by yourself. And I'm hoping what you can do is start to pull out some specific examples all by yourself, type them in the live chat. And these specific examples, of course, have to discuss dragonflies, since we've identified this as the topic. Now, keep in mind, this is the first paragraph of the passage, and we already understand that an introduction is laying down sort of a general foundation or background context of what's to come. So if I would expect the comments or the ideas here presented to be a little bit more general in nature about dragonflies. And then once we get into the middle paragraphs, I believe they'll become more specific. But take about 10, 15 seconds even. Can you skim read over the details here? See if you can pull out one or two interesting details, specific details, all about dragonflies in an introductory sense. Share them with us in the live chat when you're ready. And you can pull the vocabulary words right from the passage, by the way, rather than using your own words to explain. Oftentimes that's easier for this exercise. I'm going to just underline them. So my job's easy. But if you want to write them out, just take a few words from the passage. You're trying to identify the details. Yeah.
The first one we got was their habitat.
Okay, that's the last one. No, that's the last one, but we'll count it. Yeah, but that's detail 3. What else can we find?
Exists more than 300 million years.
Perfect. Let's do them in order. Yep, you got it.
Dragonflies species is not known. The odonates. Habitats.
Okay, it's the last one.
Where to find them.
That's habitats. Yep.
Let me see what you're looking for. Okay.
Ta-da! Sorry, I'm impatient today.
5,000 dragon. Okay, yeah, 5,000 dragonflies worldwide.
One of you had mentioned that the number of dragonfly species is not known. And I don't find that near as important as there are actually close to or over 5,000. So you were on the right track with that detail. But again, part of your ability to be a successful reader in a timed test like the CELPIP is being able to distinguish the details that are most important and most helpful from other secondary details that, yeah, they might be notable, but they're not near as important. So do you see the difference between that? Oh, we really don't know how many dragonflies there are, but we believe there's more than 5,000 worldwide. If you had to pick one of those details as being more fruitful, it's definitely the precise number. We're estimating there's more than 5,000 worldwide. So that's the detail I would go with here as a background context. And a lot of you definitely noticed the habitat of the dragonfly. Nobody told me though, and this is the detail you're missing, so I'm pointing it out to you now, that all dragonflies, according to this passage anyway, live near the water. So the habitat of an animal or an insect is where they live. So that part you got. Okay, so these are sort of the three main details of paragraph A. And when you look at them as a group, they don't really relate back to one topic, right? We're understanding how long they've been around, how many species there are, and where they live. So those are sort of three different general topics. But the whole point is this is your introductory paragraph. And an introductory paragraph does indeed give you an introduction or the background or the general information about the topic, which happens to be about dragonflies. So on your piece of paper in front of your computer during the test, what I want you to do is to write down the letter A because it represents paragraph A. And beside that, you're going to use your own words, keep it simple, and try to give the paragraph a title like we've done here. So general info makes sense to me. You could use your own words. But if we think of paragraph A having these general details or introductory details, what that means then is later when we look at those 9 statements, if we have a statement that sounds more introductory in nature, we're going to start our search in paragraph A, right? We will not have time on this test to read all 4 paragraphs every single time we want to match a statement. So we're trying to find a very quick starting point so we can locate that answer a lot more quickly. And that's why we're taking a moment, about a minute of our time on the test to do it this way. Okay, so on to paragraph B. This is the very first middle paragraph. So right away, we're understanding that even though we're still talking about dragonflies throughout this whole passage, paragraph B is going to have a more specific focus, something to do with the dragonfly. And it's up to all of us to figure out what that focus is. So just like we did with paragraph A, let's start with just the first sentence. Can you please read this to yourself? And maybe in the live chat, can you pull out the one word from this sentence that you feel is the most important for now? It's giving us the focus of what's to come. If you could choose one word and one word only right from the sentence, which is the most important word? Remember, it's about dragonflies, but it's going to be more focused.
Hi. Eggs.
That sounds good to me. Okay.
Lay. Somebody said laying. Lay eggs. Life cycle. Reproduction.
No, okay, whoa, stop. You're getting way off topic. What we want to do right now is find one word from this precise sentence that is the most important focus of this sentence. So far I've heard lay and I've heard eggs. Those are the only 2 acceptable answers for the moment since they appear in sentence number 1. If you had to pick between both of those ideas, I think rather than the action of laying, we don't yet know what we're laying. So I don't think that lay is the most important detail here. So again, part of our practice today is really, really honing our ability to pick out the words and the ideas that are most important so that we can focus our attention and see how all the ideas connect. So if I also had to pick one word from the sentence, it would be the eggs, because that's actually what's being laid. All right. Now, I don't think this is the topic. I don't think this is the main idea of this whole paragraph, because quite frankly, once those eggs are laid, there's really nothing more else to say. I think this is a specific detail. So again, as a practice reader, I'm assuming that I'm going to be given more details that somehow relate back to the concept of these eggs that are being laid. I'm going to show you the rest of the paragraph here now. Can you have a quick look through? Again, pull out 2 more specific details that are in the same ballpark, that are in the same category, that relate back to the notion that these eggs are being laid by the dragonfly. I'm looking for 2 details that sort of fit that idea. It's like a sequence, right? See if you can find them for me.
Nymph stage. We're still getting answers of eggs, but I think that's the previous one.
That's
okay.
past.
Somebody said cycle.
Okay.
Lifespan.
Okay. Now, are you giving me main ideas or are you giving me specific details? What do you want to do here today? I'm looking for specific details. So I see eggs, I see nymph, and we're told in
Yeah.
this paragraph that a nymph is like a baby dragonfly. A nymph is what hatches from those eggs, right? So first you get the egg, then it hatches and you get the nymph. That's what we're reading here. And a nymph, a baby dragonfly, we're told, lives anywhere between 1 to 4 years. So that's where we're at so far. Can you continue reading? Like right after where I've underlined there, there is another detail that sort of fits the rest of that story or the rest of that process. What is the detail? What happens after the nymph?
Just this topic is not my favorite about hatching and eggs, and
I love it. I love biology. My
I
favorite
like
topic.
I actually love biology too, but not like insects and
Yeah.
bugs are
Well,
not my favorite. My kid
I
loves them, so I
no
think I have a
kidding.
future of indulging in bugs. But for
Yeah. So
now,
I used to teach elementary school, and yeah, my grade 3 students loved stuff like this. Of course, at a much easier reading level, but yeah, we definitely had stories like this. So eggs to nymphs to what happens
full
after?
develop, full development, developed adult.
Yeah, that's it. That was my
Yay!
happy dance. Okay,
Congratulations.
good. Eggs to nymphs to adults. Okay, so we've got that sequence. And again, interestingly here, these are not the main ideas of this paragraph. These are the specific details. So once we've recognized that all of these details fit together, they actually do discuss the same broad topic or the same main idea. And if you keep reading now from where we've left off, you're going to be able to pull out 2 words actually right from that final sentence that tells you the main idea of this particular paragraph. One of you mentioned half of it earlier. That's a hint. Can you find the full topic now? You're welcome to use your own language, but why not just take it right out of the passage? Make your job a lot easier because you're in a time limit on the test, right? So, what is paragraph B all about? What is the main idea? We're ready to identify it now. Look at the very last sentence, and it'll hopefully jump out at you. What are we talking about? Eggs hatching to nymphs, nymphs growing into adults. What do all of those things have in common? Make that connection. No takers?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What we're trying to do is figure out what is this paragraph all about. So we want to enter something on our outline. Paragraph B. What title could we give paragraph B? What is the main idea?
Okay.
So far, we recognize
We have
details.
life cycle, entire life cycle. Life cycle. Yeah, it's all life cycle.
Awesome. Yeah. So what I'm going to do first of all is write that down into my outline. Paragraph B is about the dragonfly's life cycle. What I also want to point out to you, and I think why we were struggling here, is because up until now, all throughout that email, and even in paragraph A of this passage, the main idea was presented first, and then all the details discussing that main idea followed. That's your typical structure of a paragraph, and we probably see it more commonly. But now and then, especially in intermediate to advanced level text, like the one we're working with, sometimes the order of those ideas are going to be flipped. So in this case, our main idea isn't identified until the very end of this paragraph, but we know life cycle has to be the main idea because those are the only details here that are discussed. Eggs, nymphs, and adults. All of those details relate back to that main topic of the dragonfly's life cycle. So it honestly doesn't matter what order your details are given to you in a paragraph. The way you're going to be successful as a reader to understand what you're reading about and to find the details you need very quickly is to understand the difference between what a main idea is, introduces the topic of the whole paragraph, versus the details that give you specific examples of that topic, just like we've seen here. So it's a nice example to demonstrate where the main idea comes last. Be aware of that. It does happen from time to time. Let's move on to something easier. I think this is obvious. Here's your first sentence of paragraph C. What's the main idea presented, do you think, just based on what you're reading here?
Predators.
Okay.
And then somebody said praise.
Okay.
Oh, actually, it's hunting techniques. Yeah, hunting techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. We know paragraph C has to be about dragonflies, but when I look at the first sentence rather, dragonflies are skilled predators whose hunting techniques are specific to each phase of their life cycle. Okay, so life cycle, remember, was just discussed in paragraph B. So the coherence here is evident. We're sort of referencing back to where we just came from, but we're presenting the new topic of focus for this paragraph. For whoever guessed predators to start with, you were sort of on the right track. A predator is a hunter, but the predator is the actual person or thing doing the hunting. And this particular sentence is not focusing on the predator itself. Rather, it seems to be focusing on the hunting techniques, because it's these techniques or methods of hunting that we're told are specific to the life cycle. And again, since we just learned about the life cycle, it makes sense that we're now focusing on these hunting techniques. So step one, identifying the focus of what we presume to be the main idea here of this whole paragraph. And once we've got that in mind, what we would expect to read about now are examples of hunting techniques, right? All the details have to match the topic of the paragraph. So let's read through and see if we can actually find examples of how dragonflies are going to hunt. And I'll maybe read this out loud with you as we go. The vocab's just a little bit trickier in this paragraph, I think. So that second sentence reads, as nymphs, we've already learned that word in paragraph B. It's like a baby dragonfly in a way. So as nymphs, they stalk their quarry. When you stalk, you lie quietly in wait. And the quarry would be the victim, whatever food is walking along or flying along. You can imagine these baby dragonflies lying in wait on low-lying greenery or shoots. So I get the image in my mind of these little nymphs that are hiding out on these plants that are low to the ground. And they're just waiting for their victim to come by so they can pounce. We read also that they lie in mud at the bottom of a pond to wait for prey, or bury themselves in the mud to search for food. So by burying themselves, that's a different example or another example of a hunting technique, how they catch their food. And then we're told that they eat aquatic insects. Aquatic just means water. So insects in the water. And once they grow big enough, sometimes they consume or eat tadpoles and even small fish. As adults, though, dragonflies hunt while flying through the air, positioning their legs to form a basket. So just picture that in your mind, this dragonfly flying through the air, and the legs are positioned to sort of drag and catch mosquitoes, small midges, and other tiny flying insects. So because we've noted 3 particular examples of how these dragonflies are hunting, I would say without a doubt that paragraph C is indeed about hunting techniques. So that's certainly the main idea or topic of this paragraph, and we'll write that down on our outline. But as I read that paragraph to you, I'm also hoping you recognize there's a little bit more to this than just the hunting technique. In fact, I think I referenced about 6 examples of food that the dragonflies would eat, whether they're aquatic insects, tadpoles, small fish, mosquitoes, midges, and flying insects. There are so many examples of food mentioned here. I think what I'd like to do is just tuck that into the outline. So this paragraph C talks about basically how the dragonfly hunts and then what they're hunting for, what they're going to eat. So I would put those 2 ideas together as they're so closely related. So again, what this means then is if we get a statement from the test that clearly discusses how the dragonfly is going to hunt, what it's going to eat, we're going to come back to paragraph C as our starting point. All right, last paragraph. Remember, the last paragraph usually gives sort of a summary of the whole piece. So it's probably going to say something about dragonflies, obviously, but it's usually oftentimes I should say, give sort of a nod to the future. Remember back to the email when we looked at that concluding paragraph from Tomiko. Tomiko mentioned the conference, but then also wanted Sanji to confirm details so they could make the bookings for the flights and hotel. So I'm wondering in this paragraph too, if we're going to get sort of a summary of dragonflies in general, but if there also might be this connection to the future. So have a look here at the first sentence in paragraph D. If you could pull out, even 2 words there that focus your expectations about what you're going to read in the rest of the paragraph, which 2 words do you think are most important to help you understand what's to come? You've got researchers are continually uncovering interesting facts about the dragonfly. So when I read that, in my mind, I think I know what the author is going to be writing about next. So what do you think is going to be next? What 2 words there sort of give us that focus?
Hey, hi. Continuing with this topic. Interesting facts. Uncovering interesting facts. Facts about dragonfly. Yep.
Yep. I would have gone with interesting facts for sure. Remember how I said, oftentimes in the last paragraph, we get this connection to the future. So interesting facts is definitely the most important part, I would say. But I also underline continually uncovering interesting facts. I'm noting up here that the interesting facts that we're likely going to read about next have already been discovered, but it sounds like there's an interest to continue that discovery. So I think that's an important point to make. So here is the rest of the paragraph. Can you help me find an example or 2, please, of an interesting fact that is presented about dragonflies? You can take the details right from this paragraph. That's what I would do. So let's check up the structure. If interesting facts is indeed the topic, then we should be finding examples of interesting facts in paragraph D. So what are they?
Let me look. Oh, I already have one. Wow. They're pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just like we were told.
Doing a 180 on my initial apprehension regarding this subject.
Yeah.
I
like dragonflies, actually. I find them magical.
100 kilometers per hour flying, can fly up to 100 kilometers. Speed.
Yeah. I noticed that too.
Fastest insect?
One of the fastest. One of the
I have to
fastest.
tell it to my son. 360 degrees flight, 360 degrees field of vision.
Yeah.
360 degrees vision. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Vision and lenses.
They can see everywhere. Because they have so many lenses. Yeah, pretty cool. And the last part's a little tricky for you to summarize. So I'll maybe just underline it quickly. Otherwise, we'd be here for a while. That whole final part of this paragraph discusses the notion that dragonflies were purposely brought into Myanmar, a country in Southeast Asia, to eat mosquito larvae. And the whole purpose for doing that is so that they could cut down on the number of mosquitoes flying around there and transmitting diseases. So just sort of in a nutshell, bite-sized piece, controlling the mosquito-transmitted diseases sort of summarizes that last interesting fact. So in essence, again, interesting fact is set up in the beginning. We have 3 examples of interesting facts within the paragraph. No accident. This is the way that writing has to be structured. We're only allowed to talk about interesting facts here because that's the topic of the whole piece. And wouldn't you know it, look at the last sentence here. Who knows what future research will reveal about this fascinating creature? So I suspected that something like this would happen. We, the readers, are being left with a final idea to ponder moving forward into the future. And that connects really nicely to the topic of this whole piece, where we say that the research is continuing. So if you ask me to give this particular paragraph a title, I would still go with interesting facts because that's the bulk of it. We've got 3 examples of interesting facts, but I put in little parentheses there as a sort of afterthought or secondary idea that we're also emphasizing the need for continuous research. And I did that because, again, I might have a statement somewhere on the test that refers to future practices. And if that's the case, well, then paragraph D is likely where I'm going to come look. So now that we've got our outline, and again, we've talked about this in so much detail now because it's so important to go step by step when we're learning. We have to know the main idea. We have to back it up with evidence. So supporting details that refer back to the main idea. When you practice this enough times, you should be able to complete this within about a minute of your time. You've got those 4 paragraphs to work through. That's the level that we want to get to anyway. We are going to answer, let's pretend we've already answered questions 1 to 6, and we're going to start today with question 7, right here. Statement number 7 says, new information about dragonflies is still being discovered. Really quickly, look at our outline, and in the live chat, can you please identify the letter of the paragraph that you feel very probably gives us this information? We're now trying to match and select an answer. So if you could look in paragraphs A, B, C, or D, what would be the obvious starting point if you're trying to figure out statement 7 to see where it's been discussed?
D.
Yeah, and it's kind of a coincidence, really, that we just finished talking about paragraph D. On the test, remember, you would have gone through statements 1 to 6 first. So number 7 wouldn't have been such an obvious match. It just, again, by coincidence, we're starting with statement 7. We've just had a look at paragraph D. Let's go back. This is the right answer, by the way, without a doubt. But what I want to show you is the level of detail that you're going to want to go through the statements in order to match them to the paragraph to make sure you've chosen the right answer. So if you look again at the way that statement 7 is written, it says new information about dragonflies is still being discovered. And then you look at the very first sentence of paragraph D. It says researchers are continually uncovering interesting facts about the dragonfly. We can do a direct paraphrase between information and facts, right? Those two words are different, but they mean the exact same thing. So this is your job now as you're trying to match details. You're matching up the vocab, even if it's paraphrased. That whole notion of the information still being discovered from statement 7, well, it's the same thing as saying it's continually uncovering interesting facts below. And again, the whole notion in statement 7 of it being new information. Remember that final statement we looked at? So who knows what the future will hold? If we continue to do future research, well, of course, that research is going to be new. So we have matched absolutely every single part of statement 7 to details discussed within paragraph D. So with 100% confidence, we're going to select D as our answer. So on the test, you're going to click that little drop-down arrow in the white box beside the number, and then the 5 answer choices come up. It would be A, B, C, D, or E, and we've definitively matched statement 7 to D. So that becomes the answer. Let's move on to number 8. This one says, Canadian dragonflies have unique hunting techniques. This is an easy one too, I think. Have a look at the outline, A, B, C, and D. There's an obvious match, right? If you were trying to pick a starting point as to where to focus your attention, which of these 4 paragraphs would you go to? This is not a trick question. This is one of those obvious ones. Which paragraph do you think matches up to start?
Oh, I remember this. This was, I think, So everybody says C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it was C.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in statement 8, it says hunting techniques. And then when you look at the outline, we wrote down for our own title, hunting techniques. Now, the reason we wrote hunting techniques is because when we look back to paragraph C, if you can remember when we skimmed it over, hunting techniques was actually mentioned in the very first sentence. And we determined very quickly that because there were 3 examples of hunting techniques throughout this paragraph, well, clearly hunting techniques had to be the topic. So this is one of those rare instances where the language from the statement actually matches language used in the passage itself. This doesn't often happen at this level on CELPIP. So when it does, think of it as a gift. You don't have to worry about synonyms or paraphrases. You're doing a direct match. Hunting techniques, hunting techniques. So you know you're looking in the right place, but we've only got half of the statement so far covered. We have to now look at the rest of the wording in statement 8 to see if it's actually discussed throughout paragraph C. And another detail I noticed from that statement is that the hunting techniques are unique. And I would say that matches because we're told again in that first sentence that these hunting techniques are specific to each phase of the life cycle. So if something is unique, that's the same as being specific. So there's a synonym match. The ideas are still matching. So far, so good. There's one part of the statement that we haven't yet double checked, and we absolutely must before we select C as the answer. And the idea here is Canadian dragonflies. Now, I don't recall off the top of my head seeing anything about Canadian dragonflies when we first skimmed this over. Can you have a quick look through paragraph C and just double check for me? You're looking for the words Canadian, Canadian dragonfly. I doubt there would be a synonym for that. So Canadian, is it there? Is it not there? There's nothing, right? Nothing there about a Canadian dragonfly. So even though the entire statement itself, the rest of the idea matches up. Sure, we're talking about unique hunting techniques. Because we've not read anything about the Canadian dragonflies having these techniques, we cannot select C as the answer. So for reading part 3, it's always an all or nothing. Either every single detail from the statement matches, and you select that as your answer. But if even one detail is missing or incorrect, it cannot be the right answer. So we'll cross out paragraph C for now. And then looking at the rest of the outline, paragraph A is about general information. Canadian dragonflies having unique hunting techniques, that's a very specific detail. I'm confident already there's no way that specific of a detail would be in an introduction. So let's skip that. Paragraph B is about a life cycle. Statement number 8 is talking about hunting techniques. Those are two completely different ideas. So there's no way that hunting techniques is going to be described in the life cycle, I don't think. It's not a very good spot to check. Paragraph D is about interesting facts and continuous research. I mean, I suppose you could look there, but if you can recall, we've just finished answering statement number 7, and we matched statement 7 to paragraph D. So we've just looked at paragraph D. It's really fresh up here in the mind, and I don't remember reading anything about Canadian dragonflies there either. So if this were my test, I would be confident to say this statement is just nowhere to be found. So that's when the letter E comes in as your answer, not given in any of the above paragraphs. And this indeed would be your answer for this particular question. Okay, some of your CELPIP tests might have a couple of answers that are E. Other CELPIP tests might not have any answers that are E. It's just completely dependent on the ideas themselves or the statements in those 9 statements on your test and how accurately they're going to match up to the paragraphs. So again, you can see how you would never have time on a test to read all 4 paragraphs to match every single statement. There's no way you're going to have time to do that, I don't think. So in order to be successful here, our ability to find the main ideas quickly of the paragraphs and then use those main ideas as a starting point to compare the details, that's how we build up our efficiency as a reader to more quickly understand what we're reading about and to be more accurate too with our answer choices. So to summarize, I guess, the process we took today, and these are the steps I'm hoping you're going to continue to work through on your own at home, whether you're actually studying for a language test or just reading for pleasure or for work. I think these reading strategies can be used for everything. So we always start, and we did this today, we always start by identifying the topic of the whole piece. So back to that email I'd written, it was all about traveling to a conference. This reading passage from a CELPIP test we looked at was all about dragonflies. So right away, we identify the broad topic. That should not take you more than 5 or 10 seconds, really, because you're looking primarily at your introductory paragraph. We hope that you can pull out that topic rather quickly. Once you've got the topic up here in mind, we then recognize that every single paragraph of that passage is going to talk about that broad topic, but each paragraph itself is going to have its own focus. So again, going back to that email, sure, the whole thing was about traveling to a conference, but we had one paragraph just about flights to get there and another specific paragraph all about the hotel bookings and so on. So find your main ideas within each paragraph. And then once you've figured that part out, then we're ready for those specific details, the 5 W's. You might get who, where, when, what, why. Any combination of those details. And those details can only talk about the main topic of that one paragraph. So when we understand the structure of the whole piece and how each part or each paragraph within the piece relate to each other, what that does, first of all, tenfold, is it's going to improve our ability to actually understand what we're reading about. You don't have to know the meaning of every single vocabulary word in order to do this. As long as you're understanding those main ideas and you're able to pick out at least a few supporting details that match it, that's a great place to start. Again, your comprehension skills are going to improve significantly. And quite frankly, you might not think this is important, but I do. I think that when we're able to understand what we're reading about, this is the piece that makes reading more enjoyable. And true, when you're studying for a test, you might not consider that to be too much fun. I understand that. But quite frankly, whatever passages you're reading at home to develop your own reading skills, I think that we're a lot more successful in life in general when we're doing something that we truly enjoy. So if you can find passages that discuss things that interest you and then develop your ability to pick out main ideas and supporting details, I think you're going to be more motivated to keep up with the studies. And the more we practice, of course, the more experience we get. And hopefully the more successful we become too. As far as your test performance, it is, of course, going to help you answer questions a lot more quickly and a lot more accurately or efficiently when you're able to identify what the question's asking you to find and know exactly what part of the reading passage is going to give you those details. Again, on a test, we often don't have time to read the whole text for to answer every single question, right? It's knowing where to look. And the second half of that, which we really practice today, it's knowing which of the details are the important ones that we have to take note of that are actually going to help us answer the questions from the test. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to come back to you now. If you've got any questions about reading in general, we can maybe do a quick little Q&A here. And, sorry, I have to find you first. There you are. Couldn't find the right button and I didn't know where I was. All right.
I can already wager a guess that a lot of the questions are going to be about being able to do this in the time provided.
Yeah.
So if you want to answer that first and then give everybody an opportunity to ask other questions.
Yeah.
We can do
Yeah.
that.
So again, you have to remember that the CELPIP reading test does become more challenging as the test progresses. So by reading part 3, which is what we focused on today in the last half of our episode, and even into reading part 4, you're looking at skill set there to be about CLB 9 to 12. So yes, for people that are beginning their language journeys and are perhaps working at a CLB 5 or 7, you're probably not going to answer all the questions yet on a reading part 3 in the time, because if we're just starting at a beginner level to develop reading skills, you're still working on things like vocabulary development, simple sentence structure, understanding meaning in that way, right? So we have to build the foundational skills first. And we've done lots of work on vocab, etc. in previous episodes. And once we've got that foundation laid, today's episode was all about really fine-tuning. So these skills are really pushing you to kind of get up into that intermediate level. And these are the skills that will certainly carry you through to the more challenging aspects of the test. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. Nobody needs a perfect score on CELPIP. It would be wonderful if you could all get 38 out of 38 on your reading test and get that level 12. Nobody needs a level 12, right? Whether it's for PR applications or what have you. So rather than aim to have that perfect score and to get all those questions right and so on, if you miss a few, if you don't even have time to answer a couple of the questions, it's not going to lower your score down to, to a point that's below what you're targeting, provided you are practicing these skills at home, because they take time to develop. You're consistent with your practice. So when you find a method that works for you, continue to use it. And if you're applying those same skills under timed constraints in your study sessions first, and then in the CELPIP testing room, bit by bit, you are going to get faster. You're going to know exactly where to look. You're going to develop an automatic sixth sense about what this paragraph is about, what details it's discussing, which of those details is important to answer the questions. Again, it's just step by step by step. And I hope today's episode did present the strategies in bite-sized pieces so that you're able to accomplish that on your own time as you work towards your own goal.
Thank you. Okay, I think we don't have any, everybody's just talking about time management.
Yeah, that's always the big one, yeah.
How can you access the link to this session? So this is on YouTube on our channel, CELPIP Official. What I would recommend is to, at this moment, try and subscribe to our channel so that you have access to all these videos, and then you can find them by playlist. So this is reading, so you'll find it in the reading playlist. Okay, does the passage disappear when answering the questions for the third part in the CELPIP test?
No. So the nice thing about doing a computerized test like CELPIP is that your reading passage is always on the left of the computer screen, and the questions you're answering will always be on the right-hand side of the same computer screen, right? So again, it's just one screen, but it's sort of split into halves. So that allows you the ability to, again, pick out these main ideas and details and immediately look at your questions, and your eyes can go back and forth as you're identifying the keywords and ideas to find the right part of the passage to look at. Yeah. Yeah, this would be, can you imagine doing this without seeing the passage? My goodness, that would be tough for everybody. Yeah, we're
Also,
testing your ability to read, not to memorize.
exactly. Also, like, unlikely for you to ever have that situation in real life. Nobody is going to.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to refer to a text before answering a question, they're not going to say no. I want you
yeah,
to do it in memory. Yes.
right, right.
So,
Good point.
which reading material articles do you recommend to improve your reading?
Again, I addressed this, I think, a little bit in episode today. It's got to be something that you enjoy. We have lots of free materials online, whether it's on our YouTube channel. We do some free webinars. I do monthly anyway. Those are recorded on our channel. We've got an online bookstore of materials that we sell. But again, as long as you're reading something, I don't care what it is. Frankly, get yourself a comic book if that's what really interests you. Every single written text is going to follow the same structure as what we talked about today. Some will be at beginner level, where the vocab is much easier to understand, yes, but every single reading passage will introduce one topic, and then every single part of that passage is going to refer back to that topic. It's going to have its own focus as you go, and so on and so on. So yeah, if you, well, I was about to say, if you're interested in keeping up with current events in today's landscape, it's all pretty bleak in the world, but an online news article is an excellent way to really hone your intermediate level skills, because I think the writing is about the same level as you would get at, say, a reading part 3 or 4, right? News journalists are proficient in English. They write for a living, and the vocabulary and structures and ideas are definitely intermediate level. So that's, if you're already at about a CLB 8 or 9, those would be excellent resources. Just pick up your cell phone, open a news app, and read an article about a topic that you enjoy. Again, it's always about the enjoyment. If it's something you hate, it's going to be hard to get into and focus, I think. So yeah, I leave that up to you to figure out what your own interests are, for sure.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have for today. Somebody asked us about the topic next week. We'll let you know. I mean, you'll find out on our Instagram account. You can follow us at CELPIP Test Official. They actually recommended speaking, and we haven't done speaking in a while, so we can think about it.
Yeah, we definitely have lots of ideas we can do, for sure. Yeah, but we've done a lot on reading. So yeah, I think we'll take a little pause from the reading just for now, as we have focused exclusively on that for the last several episodes because of all of your requests. But yeah, let's move on and do something a little different next week, and we'll let you know what that is shortly.
Okay. Okay, this is a question for you. So I have a question here that is not for you, and I will answer that later. But this is for you. How to slow down when speaking?
Oh, good question. Arinola, if you know, let me know. I'm teasing. I speak very quickly myself, as you probably have noticed by now. I honestly, off the top of my head, don't know what to tell you. It's something that you've got to make a conscious effort to do. First and foremost, figure out if the speed of your speech is actually problematic. We all have slightly different rhythms and cadences, I guess, as we speak in any language, frankly, not just in English. But if you're speaking and people are looking at you wide-eyed and can't follow you, chances are you're speaking too quickly. If that's something that is affecting people's ability to understand you, then it's just something that you'll need to make a conscious effort to do to slow the speech. And it's going to feel ridiculously unnatural for you at first. But the more that you pay your own mind's attention to it as you're speaking, the more natural it does become. I think, too, there's a difference in the speed we speak at, whether we are performing for a test. Like on CELPIP, I think your mind would be a little bit more aware. I've got to watch my speed. Whereas when you're out talking with your friends in real life, chances are you fall back into that natural rhythm for you. I suppose the best way as well to assess your own abilities is to record your practice. And I always say that. Just grab your cell phone and hit record as you practice answering a question at home. Listen to it back and just assess your own speed, right? Like you can determine for yourself if you think it was natural or not. I would honestly get other opinions of people that I trust well enough. Ask a friend or a family member who isn't afraid to tell you if you're speaking too quickly, right? So I think just being aware of the problem, if it is one, and then just paying a close attention to it with more practice is probably best. Yeah.
I guess since we probably is this is what I think this question is asking, is how does speed impact your speaking response evaluation in your CELPIP test? So like, I'm a fast speaker also, and especially if I have, and she said, even when you have good content, that's fair too. When you have something to say, you say it faster. And so how does that impact your score?
It only, features of the actual speech presentation only negatively impact your score when it's making it difficult for the listener to follow along and understand what you're saying. So again, I haven't ever shown you any examples. Maybe I should someday. I do have 1 or 2 examples of speakers I've heard that even I, as a native speaker of English, have a very difficult time following because they talk so fast like this and everything they say comes out of their mouth. Like, I kid you not, I heard a response like that once and just about fell off my seat. The speed of your speech, if we can't understand any of your ideas, is going to have a drastic effect on your score. But if we can understand your good content, as you're suggesting, Aranola, if your, again, details are specific and interesting, the coherence is strong, you fully answered the question, if you've got all of those other major skill sets that are demonstrated incredibly well, and the speed is a little bit fast, you know, that's only one little weakness in the big picture of all the other wonderful skill sets that you've demonstrated. So it certainly is still possible to earn a high score if you have 1 or 2 weaknesses that you're exhibiting. Again, nobody expects perfection from you, but just don't let it become such a detriment if you're speaking so incredibly quickly that we can't even understand your ideas. Then yeah, how do we assess that when we don't know what you're saying, right? So it's kind of a balancing act, I guess.
Thank you. Listening has been the hardest for me. I'm trying to note while listening. Trying to note while listening isn't so easy. Is there another way?
On a test? I don't think so. What I suspect will happen is if you don't take any notes while you're listening to the passages on the test, you'll get some of, if you understand it, you'll probably get some of the answers correct. But I think you'll probably forget some of the details, and without seeing those ideas written down in note form and seeing how those ideas relate to each other, I think it's going to be a little bit challenging to answer more questions correctly. I think you will do better if you've actually got a record of what those ideas were. Because again, this isn't a memory test, and it's one thing to understand things as you're listening, but knowing that some of these questions on the test are going to be specific detail ones. And inference, to make inferences, you've got to make connections between details. So if you've got a list of those important points in front of you, it's just going to allow you to work through the material a little bit more efficiently. So yeah, note-taking is a huge skill. And it's not just for the CELPIP test. We actually use note-taking in so many fashions throughout our daily lives, even in the workforce. I know AI is so prominent nowadays, but like meetings that you sit in on, it's just beneficial for you to note down for yourself what these points are because we understand them better. Anyway, we'll do a listening episode another time then and see if we can give you some tips on note-taking.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Brandi. And we will see you next time.
Next time. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, let me go talk about this question, which is an important question. Would we know during the test if that particular items are that we are answering are unscored items? So we get this question, not this question, but we get the question about unscored items like fairly regularly, because every time we go through the cycle of new test takers preparing, writing their test, going away, and then we get new test takers again. And then this is all new information again. So I will talk about it right now because I think it's important. Like most other English language tests, we do something called unscored items, and we include them in your listening and reading. These are for training purposes, and it's not, you will either get it in the listening test or on the reading test. And they come as, so you have like 4 tasks. They'll come as a 5th task. But the thing is that you won't know which item is the unscored item. So we would recommend that you perform the same with the same energy and the same kind of focus. So that's what unscored items are. It's completely random. The system picks the test taker. We don't know who is going to be picked, and we shouldn't know who is going to be picked. The system picks it. It's completely random. It can be in any test location, in any country, anywhere. But it is a thing that exists, and we have it on our FAQs also, because we often get people who come back to us worried that they got like some system error. It's not a system error. It's just a training thing that most English language tests use within their test. So you won't know which section it is. It is unscored. So by chance, if you perform poorly in that section, it's not going to affect your score, but you won't know which part is unscored. So somebody's asking about how do we practice coming up with ideas. I would recommend that you try our practice tests. We have sales every month. I think we have one this month on the 27th, March 27th. We also have two free practice tests on our website. So definitely practice. You can also practice with ChatGPT. Brandi has talked about this before, and you can go watch our previous episodes in terms of reading or inference questions. You can use that, and also time yourself. So once you do a practice test, you will know how much time it takes for you to perform the task. Keep that in mind, and then time yourself and keep practicing. And then if you're looking for reading material, exactly what I mean by ChatGPT, if you're looking for reading material, you can just ask ChatGPT, or you can buy any of our practice tests. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I haven't forgotten the trivia question. So the trivia question was, the month of March takes its name from which Roman god? The answer is Mars. Somebody actually responded to this in the beginning. And congratulations to you. If I find it, I will share it here. There. Congratulations. And thank you everybody for joining us. We will see if we can try to get speaking next time, but if not, we'll let you know. Please follow us on Instagram as well to be updated on what we'll be doing on YouTube next. Thanks, and stay safe. Bye.